Hello. I'm so.
Are we muted? Your volume, let's just turn it. There we go. Thank you, Stu.
How many?
Good evening,
engineers it
everyone.
takes to. Sorry. Oh, we got one. What was it? Yay, that's beautiful. Okay.
Hello, Rudolph.
Hi, Rudolph.
Okay, people at the bar, we're going to close it off for a second. Okay, the slides work. Just checked.
Welcome, everybody. So great to see all the faces and for everyone to physically be present. We've been waiting for this for a very long time. No, it's fine. I'm just going to do the introduction. So JoziJS is back, folks. Woo! Woo. So we are extremely honored for you to be here on this cold weather. And yeah, I hope you enjoy all the things we have planned for you today. Other folks.
So I think, there we go. I noticed on the RSVP list that most people are coming to JoziJS for the first time. This is what JoziJS used to look like. Consistently, we would sit with over 100 people almost at every single meetup that we had. And so when Meetup told us that they want to take down JoziJS because we haven't met in a while, we realized that it's probably time that we bring back this awesome community and introduce it to even more people today.
All right. Am I code of conduct? Yes. All right. Be nice. I think to fit in here, it's not that complicated. Just treat each other with respect. Be constructive. If somebody is up here presenting something, don't be a troll or a heckler. Be supportive. Ask good questions. We're here to work together. We're all here to learn, and don't be spammy. Yeah, it's that's about it.
That is our official code of conduct. TM.
Yeah. Oh no, one of the
Press
wizards
again.
is gone. Again. Oh.
And a Rudolph appears.
Hello, everyone. I am new here. I've never run any of these things, so I'm learning. Be nice.
Awesome. So you'll see on our meetup page that JoziJS has 4 co-organizers. To be about 5 of us, 6. There used to be 6 of us, and with only 3 of us left, we decided that we need someone else to come on board and help us to make sure that we are able to address all of the things that we should be addressing as a community. And JoziJS isn't just about JavaScript. It's about the web as a platform. And so we're really looking forward to expanding just beyond just JavaScript, because the web is way more than that. It's about a whole range of things, from testing, from using Python in the web, and if you are feeling brave, using C++ as well. That's entirely up to you. We want to hear about it. I don't know if we have more slides after this. Oh, our sponsors. Thank you very much to BBD. Thank you very much to BBD for sponsoring, firstly, our Meetup subscription to make sure that Meetup doesn't close us down. Secondly, our venue. They are also the sponsor for the food and the drinks tonight. So thank you very much to BBD. And we are actively looking for more sponsors. VT. And so if any of you would like to support this meetup, please feel free to contact any one of us, and we will make it happen very, very, very quickly. Before I close off, I think there is one more slide. Awesome. We are a beginner-friendly meetup. We want to hear about all of your perspectives. So please, please, please submit a talk. The same link you will find on our meetup.com page. Anything that is related to the web or building on the web, we want to hear about it. Submit your talks. We will make sure that every single month there is 2 talks. We have past talks, so if you want to see what JoziJS was like and some of the topics that were covered, you can find a link to that on our meetup page as well, or our YouTube page, JoziJS. And that is mostly it. I believe I've covered everything. Yes?
Can't physically be present, though we do urge you to physically be present for all of this goodness. But if you can't, then you can also catch on our YouTube channel, and you can also post your questions there.
Yes, we are currently live streaming on YouTube. We don't know to how many people, but we are currently live streaming to YouTube, and we will try to make sure that that exists every single time. JoziJS will happen once a month, every single month. We just need to figure out whether it's the first Thursday, second Thursday, last Thursday. We're going to try out a couple of things and then make a decision there. But every single month, we will have a JoziJS. So submit your talks so that we have line up front and people can know that you're going to speak early enough. I think that's enough from us. I think we can sit down, enjoy beer and the talks. So if you're watching at home, you should be here for beer. We have 2 incredible speakers today. I'm going to start off with our first one, who was involved in a Twitter beef just yesterday. They call him the Kendrick Lamar of software dev in Johannesburg now. Let's give a warm welcome to Stu.
Na.
Try and say hello.
Deuces.
Okay, so
Exit full screen. Found it. Which browser window is this one?
let me help you. Let me help you.
Found it.
There we go. Then you can just go to the other one.
All right, cool. Where's mine?
There we go.
There you go.
And then we'll do the rest of the magic.
Oh my goodness. Audio is fine. So, hello everyone. Just before I begin, I'm gonna try to understand my audience. How many people here have never touched Vue.js? It's good enough. So, yeah, let's begin. Again, hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Today I'll talk about the many ways of authoring a Vue component, Next and Nitro, the actual write once, deploy everywhere framework or frameworks. Touch on some integrations if I still have time, and finally, tell you about slide dev. At the end of the talk, I hope I've added some tools to your toolbox and re-enabled you to look at web development in my point of view. I think that's a good intro. Again, my name is Tutuzo Kumete, Stu for short. I'm a consultant at Demon, consultancy based in the UK, one of third co-hosts of the ZA Integrated podcast, a father to a beautiful little girl, and a serial Twitter of note. So yeah, follow me for some great words of coding wisdom or some dry dad jokes. So before joining Demon, I worked for a consultancy based in Durban called Codio. I was primarily focused on the Yambi platform. I'm not sure if many people know the Yambi platform. The stack was ASP.NET, Vue.js, of course, God forbid, AngularJS, the first one. So the front-end framework chosen to power call centers, online ordering platforms in 8 different countries and counting for thousands of restaurants was Vue.js. The reasons for that is it's ridiculously easy to pick up and learn, whether you're new to the web frameworks altogether, or coming from an alternative one, React, AngularJS, or Angular. It will take most people hours or days to get up to speed and be productive in a team. We were able to use Vue.js in tiny patches for user interfaces in legacy applications. that power back offices for franchisees, support brands and marketers, progressively enhance their experience, and also as a full-featured framework that we all at least use once to buy pizza or a burger at some point. Continuing with the ordering system as an example, we were able to introduce and adopt an architecture on top of the framework that made it easy for engineers from object-oriented programming backgrounds and back-end devs essentially to contribute meaningfully. It also makes it easy to work with designers with no interest in JavaScript, particularly around the, view templates. Being able to come in as a new dev on the team and introduce meaningful work is testament of how a well-architected Vue project is easy to maintain, no matter how large it eventually became. And our Vue project was successfully extended through Webpack to support multiple brands and designs, while using the same code base for the business logic. Where are my notes? So not only does the logic written serve the web application, but using the exact, using React Native Bridge for mobile apps, the same Vue projects leverages some native features for within Android or iOS. For push notifications, for instance, think Debonair's birthday vouchers. TLDR, I've built buttons in Vue.js being pressed in 18 different countries, which is, I think, pretty cool. Now, I'm sure people are waiting to see some code, and I think I've done the most boring part of this talk. So let's take a look at how to write a Vue component. For the first time I touched Vue.js to learn it, to using it in production, Vue.js has undergone a single major version change from version 2 to version 3, and throughout defining a component has remained fairly the same. Single file components are still rocking the iconic trio, the template, the script, the style block, all encapsulating and collocating the view, logic, and styling of the component in the same file. The Vue team also introduced the composition API, a way to define your logic with imported API functions. Along with it, the setup attributes, which hints Vue to make compile time transforms, allowing us to compose our logic with less boilerplate than we did before. Alternatively, you could continue using the options API. It's implemented on the composition API, which is centered around the concept of a component instance. Think this keyword, which aligns better with a class-based mental model, which also makes the options API beginner-friendly, but both interfaces are powered by the same underlying system. Speaking of class-based mental models, you can also define Vue components as just JavaScript classes. Of course, with some library help, you could use Vue class components as a decorator for your component definition, Vue property decorator that builds on top of the latter, and for your components properties. Sounds like gibberish for now, but I'll get to the juicy parts. The two libraries I just mentioned are no longer recommended to be used because in Vue 3, you're now pushed to using the more functional approach to defining your components. But if you still want to continue with the direction of class-based components, focus on the Vue community created Vue-facing decorator, which re-enables class-based components with extra flavor added by Vue 3. If you know how to write a pure JavaScript class, you pretty much know how to write a class-based component in Vue. A class property will be your data property, of course. Lifecycle hooks are just regular methods of the class, and getters enable you to define computed properties. This will probably make sense for people with some experience with Vue.js. Of course, it's a Vue component, so you have to add some sprinkles so that you tell JavaScript that you're actually writing a Vue component. You decorate it as a component, and finally use the toNative that transforms your class into a Vue options API component. So that's one way to tell the rest of Vue or the Vue application that, hey, this is a Vue component also, even if it's written differently. So throughout these ways of defining your components, the logic, the templates and styles usually remain the same, especially if you're still using the Vue single file component method. So there's a subset of devs that see view template syntax and think, yeah, V4, VF are just weird. I have two questions then for them. Do you also think other HTML attributes are just as weird? Because honestly, view templates feel almost native to HTML. Second question for React devs, what are those? Yeah, but then it does happen in some instances within a Vue project that you get to use JSX, whether you're trying out Vue for the first time, but you still want to define your user interfaces with something you're familiar with, and you need the flexibility of being able to define multiple functional components in a single file. You can still use JSX. For example, using our previous composition API example, we can pretty much rewrite every component we want as JSX, but careful when doing such. Transforms from React are different from transforms in Vue.js. For instance, in Vue, you can still use all your HTML attributes within your JSX, like class, which I think is a reserved keyword in JavaScript, so that's why React falls apart. So you have to use class name. And for in forms, form labels, I think, which again is a reserved JavaScript keyword, which React falls apart on. Fun fact, Vue templates are compiled into render functions, and JSX in Vue is just a fancy render function. So why does Vue recommend we use templates? Templates are closer to actual HTML, like I mentioned before. So if you know how to work with HTML, you pretty much know how to work with Vue templates. And templates are easier to statically analyze due to their deterministic syntax. The Vue compiler is way better at writing efficient and performant render functions than you and I could ever. During compilation, parts of the templates that don't contain dynamic bindings will be hoisted and reused on every re-render. The compiler can then statically analyze the templates and leave hints in the generated code so that the runtime can take shortcuts whenever possible. I wanted to check how much time I've spent up here. Anyway, now that you're a professional at writing a Vue component and building your next Facebook, how do you configure the router? How do you set up Pinia for state management, not Redux? How do you fight with server-side rendering and fiddle through NPM to find libraries to help with SEO, meta tags, or perhaps just your blazing fast data fetching library? There's actually a lot of moving parts to bring together when building a real-life project. So what's next? Well, it's a batteries-included framework for building performant and production-grade full-stack web apps and websites. I just copied-pasted that from the docs. Next is a Vue meta framework, as much as Next, Remix, and Gatsby are React meta frameworks. But there are subtle details that set these frameworks apart, even with all the similarities. Next and Remix, for instance, both focus on fast user experiences and efficient data handling. By the way, Remix was, for a brief moment, only available in a paid license called Supporter Preview for about a year. And then Next was, not Next, actually. Remix was acquired by Shopify. Gatsby started as a blazing fast static site generator. I think they started the trend of blazing fast something. And then from their second version and up, they started adding more interactive features like server-side rendering, integrations with CMS systems, GraphQL. Next not only had these first-class support for static site generation, but the plugin system allowed developers to bring in whatever libraries they wanted into the framework to achieve pretty much the same things. And Gatsby is not dead, by the way, or discontinued. It's been acquired by Netlify. Next and Next share a little bit more than the latter comparisons. For one, Next was inspired greatly by Next.js, from the name to the feature-rich meta framework that it is today, back when Vercel was called Zite. I'm not sure if many people remember that. For Next.js, you just write your project, push it as is, create your event handler in the API folder, and then just git push, and it will deploy, and you have backend functions and serverless functions in Zite. But to achieve the same for Next, you had to add a now.json config for their now CLI that I don't know. I don't even know when they discontinued it. But essentially, you'd write your handlers as Express handlers, the Express.js web framework. And for local development, you'd create a Vue plugin to point to those handlers to say, hey, by the way, these are the backend endpoints that you're trying to reach, which wasn't great for developer experience. So with all these comparisons, it's not to say that one framework is better than the other. We all have different preferences, and we have a way of doing a better one tool is better than the other. And oh my goodness, this shifted my notes. So apart from the ones we choose as our favorites, what I've grown to appreciate with web dev over the years is how teachings from one ecosystem translate well to another. So where's my slide? So if you don't take account the nuances brought on by the syntax used to define user interfaces, these frameworks are fundamentally the same. The design patterns for that they follow are the same. MVC has been the same since AngularJS up until, I think, I don't know if they're still following it now. Think hooks for React, Vue, and Solid.js. Again, it's the same things. And then think signals again for Vue, Svelte, and Solid.js. So if anyone's wondering what a Next project looks like, we'll just go over a quick example real quick. What's been the most important aspect of meta frameworks is the folder structure. How you add a page, you create a file, and it's just there. No need to touch the router yourself. In Vue.js or in Next specifically, you need 3 files to have a running project. Your package.json file, of course, to specify the dependencies and any scripts that you want, like to starting the dev server. The Next config, which is pretty much the brain of the whole project. But you can just start it with it's being empty. And lastly, the main component of your Next application. This main component was introduced with Next 3, and any Next 2 projects doesn't have it. And Next 2 is end of life already. I think they reached end of life in 30 June last month. So if anyone's working on a Next 2 projects, you have to migrate. The pages directory is optional and usually added as your project grows. It supports a bunch of extensions out the box. So again, you can bring your TSX. Dynamic routes are denoted using the file names for your pages. This might look familiar for someone who's worked with Next.js again. Use square brackets to denote the dynamic segments of your route or routes. I don't know how you pronounce it. If you're using TypeScript, these parameters are fully typed when accessing them either in the component or any plugin or module within the Next project. Favorite parts of working with Next is adding API endpoints, which is why with previous versions of Next, I was fixated in trying to add serverless functions through Zeit. And with version 3 being released in 2021, it was so easy to add them as backend code. It's similar to how you do it with Next. Just create a server API folder and then add your files there. So not only was Next rewritten from the ground up using TypeScript, but the Next team also built Nitro, a full stack server toolkit that powers Next. Along with it, a whole JavaScript ecosystem. So the diagram is what's the inner rectangle is H3. A library that Nitro was built on top of, which is a server engine on its own. And then they built Next on top of Nitro, which is now the server engine for Next, the web framework. So the best way to describe Nitro is that it's a headless meta framework. It's almost all the Next without the Vue and DOM related stuff. So file routing continues to be there. You have modules, you have plugins again. Today, you can use Nitro as an alternative to web servers like Express, Core, or Fastify, or Nest, I think. But Nest is more fully featured and integrated. So I don't think Nitro in that case would be a good replacement. Nitro, today, you can deploy or decide at build time which of the 22 providers that they support that you want to target without touching a single line of code in your code base. I think it's only the config that you just point, hey, I'm building this for AWS Lambda. So then you can substitute your raggedy Lambda functions for a Nitro project. You can also specify runtimes, Node, Dino, or Bun. It really doesn't matter. It's again, write once, deploy anyway. And I'm sure if it doesn't support these, you can just shove it in a Docker file and you can continue supporting more providers. Now, Next and Nitro are near perfect right ones to deploy any web frameworks for just this, in my opinion. Nitro is also built on top of another library called H3, a minimal HTTP framework built for high performance and portability. H3 is just like Vue.js. It's, again, built by the same community. So it can be added to any existing projects progressively to enhance it. Like the same way that you'd add a Vue component or application in, I don't know, a static side. It's the same way that you can also add H3 into any node framework as a single endpoint, if you can even. Notice how the handler doesn't receive a request, by the way, if you look at the example. It doesn't have a request response argument like most server libraries, but just an event argument. The library comes with a ton of utilities to help with backwards compatibility and adapters for various runtimes. Say you want to integrate GraphQL, for example. If the server library is like Apollo, Yoga, I think those are the biggest ones in the JavaScript world. You can, if they can be added as a listener, if any library can be added as a listener to a node HTTP server, Nitro, H3, or Next even can use that library also, or you can use these three into that library. Oh, my nice little example uses Porthos. I'm not sure if people know Porthos, but it's one way to defining a GraphQL schema using code first and not schema first, just a second approach. So Nitro and H3, along with 64 other tiny libraries, more packages that you can find under the unJS ecosystem, that gives JavaScript a well-needed facelift, and we can rest assured that these packages are being actively developed, tested, and maintained, because almost every single one of these tiny packages make up what we know as Next today. I've used some in production already. I added H3 to my last job. We were moving some node projects from IIS to AWS, and to add health check endpoints, I just shoved in H3 where I can, as separate commits so that people don't notice that I'm sneaking in a library that no one has ever used before, because it's a whole new ecosystem. Do I still have time? I think I've left 2 minutes. One more thing. Slide Dev, the tool that I'm using now, the whole presentation was created in it. It's a tool built with Vue.js. It provides flexibility and interactivity for devs to make their presentations much more interesting, expressive, and attractive. I think my presentation was attractive. It's Markdown based. All the slides that you saw are in a single Markdown file. I just focus on the content that I want to see. If I want to move something across, if I want to have some animation fly, I just add that as a Vue component. If I want to style something, like for instance, the URL slide dev, I had to censor it using Tailwind, all pre-configured for you. So yeah, if anyone was expecting a live demo, the whole presentation was my live demo. Thank you very much for listening to my ramble. Yeah, that's it.
No, it's fine. You can stay there. There's a piece of information that I forgot to give out earlier on. We are taking questions, and each speaker will give us 2 winners. The winners win tickets to our Escape conference happening on the 5th of September. We were just talking about it before we started today with some people that were there before. To give you an idea, we have sold 8 times as many tickets as we did last year already, without even trying to market it, just from the people that were there. So it's really, really awesome, and you stand a chance to win those prizes. So we'll take questions for Stu now, or should we take them later? Later. You want to think about them proper? I like it. Cool. So I think we'll take a, should we take a 15-minute? We'll take a 15-minute comfort break and get something We'll get something to eat in that 15 minutes, and then we'll come back at 1:15. Thank you.
What happens with the sharing and whatnot? Ah, nice. How was my first? Let me switch this off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Welcome back. And our next speaker is Umuzi's CTO. Whoop. And also a JoziJS wizard. Welcome, Sheena.
Thank you. All right. Hey, everyone. So I always like to share my slides. So if you want to scan this, then you can have the slides. It's got some links on it. I'll show it again at the end. But basically, yeah, let me start off by introducing myself. My name's Sheena. I'm a wizard. I started coding quite a long time ago, and I do software development education. That's my thing. And I do that at Umuzi, where I build remote education systems. So that means I write code and I deal with people and syllabus things and UX things, and I nerd out about the science of education and teaching a lot. And these are my emojis. So I'm going to start off with the demo. I'm not going to be too explicit about what I'm demoing. We're going to discover this over time. So I'm going to start off over here in this window. Is it big enough that people can see it? Cool. So let's do that. All right. So I just did something. Does anybody know what framework I'm using? Does anybody know? Yeah? Django. Yeah. So I'm using Django. I love Django. And this is the thing that I'm doing with Django. I'm running this application. Now, let me close that for now. Now, this looks like a to-do list app. It's very accessible, very pretty normal. I'm going to add some stuff. You'll notice that I can delete some stuff. There's a box that comes up here. I can tick some boxes as well, and there's more boxes that come up, and that's great. So it feels very single-page appy. It's not a single-page app. Like it's not. So I'm going to show you what's happening behind the scenes. So as I add something here, let's go add. You can see that a request goes out, and if I open that up, you can see that the payload is just like title foo and some middleware token thing, and the response looks like this. The response is HTML, and it's like quite a lot of HTML. There's a lot going on here. Some of it's kind of weird looking. Some of it's got these like classes like h6 blah blah blah, and then it's got this like hx get, hx target, hx swap. Who's seen that before? Has anyone seen that before? Yeah. Okay. Cool. And what's interesting is that it looks like this once it's rendered. It looks like a piece of HTML, and I can do this again. I can add bar, because I'm feeling super creative. And you can see that the next one is just a checkbox bar and delete. So it's showing up like this just because there's some CSS and there's some styling. But basically what I'm doing is I'm sending a request to the backend. The backend is rendering like a partial piece of HTML, and then it comes back to the front end, and then I'm sticking it onto the end of a div. And I can delete things as well, and that does a similar thing. So it comes up with a thing that says item deleted successfully, deleted item bar successfully, and that'll be a similar thing for add over there. So the requests that are going off are, it's almost like I'm fetching an HTML web page, but I'm just fetching a slice of it. So does anybody know what this thing is called that I'm using to do that? To do this HTML wrangling? No? Okay, cool. So this thing is called HTMX. It's really popular among Python developers because it makes Python backend developers into full stack developers, because you can make things that look and feel like single page apps that are like super, super simple. You don't need to have an extra front end framework such as like React or Vue or any of that. You can just write full stack code kind of in the backend. So that's pretty cool. So the last thing is this, the way I can create a thing and then close it, or wait a little while and closes by itself. This isn't HTMX. This is another library called Alpine.js. So that's the demo. What's in the box? So we spoke about Django very briefly. People recognized it. So I'm sure like a lot of you haven't heard of it because it's a Python web framework. Django is the framework for perfectionists with deadlines, and that's me a lot of the time. It's really rock solid. It's not a new fashionable framework. It's been around for a while. It's backed by a fantastic open source community, which I freaking love. It's got an ORM at the core. So I know lots of people are like, oh, ORMs, they make things slow and nasty, but I think that Django uses the ORM especially well. So for those of you who aren't familiar with ORMs, basically what it is a way, it stands for Object Relational Mapper. It's a way of interacting with the database. So you create all these classes, and each class represents a table, and then each row of that class can be represented by an instance of the class. I mean, each row of the table can be represented by an instance of the class. So you can have, for example, a class called user, and then you could query that and say, give me the user named Rudy the Wizard. And then you can say, send her an SMS or something. So you can get the power of SQL plus the power of Python all wrapped into one. But what's super cool about it is it makes things very, very consistent. It exposes its own shape in a very consistent way. So it makes it very quick to build views around it, build like APIs around it, or forms and things like that. So the ORM, oh, damn, I spoke about all of that already. It's revision, you guys. Okay, so then the next thing is HTMX. Now, HTMX is like, it's not super new on the scene. It has been around since about the end of 2020. And this is straight from the website. It's a bit heavy going. HTMX gives you access to Ajax, CSS transitions, WebSockets, server-side events directly from HTML using attributes. So you can build these modern front ends without having to use an extra tool. It just feels like HTML. So here is the hello world of HTMX. It's a button. When you click it, it sends a post to this endpoint. And then when the response arrives, it expects it to be an HTML response. And it just says, replace this entire button with whatever that response was. And you can use any kind of endpoint. You can use any kind of request, any verb. So you can have a get, a post, a put, a delete. Use whatever URL you want. You can tie it onto different kinds of events as well. So this is by default, it's an on-click event because it's a button, but you can also have on-scroll, on-load. You can make your own events. And then the HX swap, like you can say replace this whole element with what gets returned, or replace the beginning part, or replace the end part, or just append or prepend. So that's pretty cool. And you can also use, you can target different things. So by default, it'll target the element that sent the request. So in this case, it replaces the entire button, but you can also say, add something over there, replace that thing over there. And that's pretty powerful. So if I go back here, basically what's happening, if I look at this form over here, then you can see that there's is this big enough? If it isn't, then let me know, guys. So you can see that as I submit it, it sends off a post request to action add to do. So that's the name of the URL. And then the target is to do items, which is just a div over there. And then it says HX swap before end. So it just says take the response and put it before the end of that thing. And that's it. So again, it feels very much like a full stack thing, and it's super, super fast. There is the shortened version of it. So again, like we just post to action add to do, and then we have our target, and then we have an HX swap before end. So that's quite lovely. Now the next thing, which is really, really cool. So just like one thing to notice here, this is taking like very simple HTML attributes and just giving them superpowers. Alpine.js does a similar thing, but it's got a different goal. So Alpine, the way I explain it to myself is it's a very lightweight like state management thing. So this is the hello world of Alpine.js. So we've got a div, and then we're like, cool, inside this div, we want this thing called open to exist, and it's false. And then when we click on a thingy, then we want to set open to true. And when open is true, we want to show this thing. And so now you can add interactivity. You can do some DOM manipulation just from the HTML without having to do anything massive. You don't need you don't need a front-end framework for it, and you don't need to target the divs yourself and show and hide them. So it's super, super lightweight. The libraries themselves are tiny, and they're really, really fast, and they work on old devices and new devices. The last thing that is in here that's worth mentioning is Tailwind. I'm sure everybody here has heard of Tailwind, so that is why this looks kind of, that's why it looks kind of nice, because Tailwind saved me. Yeah, so to be clear, like HTMX is really, really popular in Django land. Like you can't go to a Django thing without hearing about somebody's fantastic experience with HTMX. Alpine.js as well, so not a Python Django thing, Tailwind as well. You can just add them to anything that has a front end and understands some HTML. So that's cool. It solves a lot of problems. There aren't any silver bullets, of course, but for me, it solved a lot of my problems. So generally speaking, if you're working with something like Django or some other Python web framework, and you want a fantastic front-end experience with a rich UI, with interactivity and speed, then you'll typically have a front end that's built with a stack of tools. So for me, I had React on the front end, and I had Material UI. I was like, I need some state management, so there's Redux. And I was like, okay, cool, I need to do some side effects, Redux Saga. And then I had Django on the back end, but now Django needs to talk to all of this stuff, so I use Django REST framework. And then you need to secure your API, so you have Guardian, and it goes on. And it works really well. You can do a lot with the stack, but the problem is that it's a lot of stuff going on. So it's two separate applications that think about life in a very different way. So if you want to make even a fairly simple full stack feature, you need to know all this stuff. And so I was working with a dev team that was working kind of slowly. And it's like, yeah, but the code is clean. We're not really dealing with any tripping over our own debt problems. We're just dealing with context switching and complexity. And that was a mess. And so I heard about HTMX at a Django conference, and I was like, this sounds too good to be true. Let me try it out. And so I took it home, and in an afternoon, I was like, okay, what's the craziest stuff that happens on our front end? Let's see if I can do it in HTMX. Oh, it's easy. Okay, cool. Then I gave it to my team. I was like, do this. And they were like, oh, it's easy. So it was great. For me personally, my productivity went through the roof, for my team as well, and we ended up building a whole new thing. We ended up rebuilding our React app in HTMX. So now it's just Django, HTMX, Alpine, Tailwind, instead of that massive stack. So for us, it was great. I'm super, super excited about the technology for a lot of reasons. Again, it's very small, it's very lightweight, it works on old devices. A lot of the people that use the stuff that I build have crappy networks and crappy machines and old devices, and so it's good for them. But for my team, productivity went through the roof. HTML is great again. It feels old school when you're doing this stuff. It's like server-side rendering of just HTML. What's going on? But it's actually super powerful. And so the way I think about it is, front-end web development has been in this complexity spiral for ages and ages. It's just getting we solve a problem, and then it's like a hydra. There's 5 more problems. Oh, okay, let's make it more complicated in this way to solve this problem. Server-side rendering is now a fancy thing in JavaScript land. It's no, that's how we used to do things always. And if you take all of the lessons of modern web development and you say, okay, what really do we want to do now that we've learned all these lessons? Okay, how can we do it with the most basic tools possible? How can we do it in an old school way, the internet was sort of designed around these things? You end up with something that's like HTMX. So the theory is that HTMX will die when HTML gets upgraded, so it can just do this stuff by default. Yeah, so that's my talk. Thanks, everyone.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
As a JavaScript developer, I feel threatened.
It's written in JavaScript.
Okay, do you have any questions? We'll take any questions. We'll start with yours.
So when it has to like render your DOM and stuff, so how does it know what to send to the backend and what not to send, or does it send everything all at once and then?
So you can tell it what to send. So you can either, like with the form example, it's like the event is tied to the form. And so it's like whatever's in the form, that's like whatever inputs are there, that gets posted across. With a lot of the time, it'll just be like I clicked or I scrolled or whatever, and you might have some information in the URL, like I'm visiting the page that has like this user ID associated with it, users / whatever. So it'll get in, like you can do whatever you need with that information. You can also use JavaScript. So you can attach a function, like a JavaScript function to one of those attributes as well. So you can say like, I don't remember what it is now. It's like hx something equals some function. And then you can generate some JSON from that function that you want to send through as well. So there's lots of different options. Yeah.
So in terms of dynamic routing and stuff, because those seem like static, I guess, endpoints, how easy is it to like create a dynamic routing sort of system with Django?
It's fine. So I can show you the code. Let me go down there. Yeah, so it's not a lot of code. I'll make it bigger now. But basically, so this is Django. Django has like a URL configuration. So all of my URLs are in this file called to-do URL. So let's go look there. And now, is it big enough? It's always, okay, I'm going to make it one more. Makes my life hard and your life easy. Oh, okay, cool. So you can see that I've got these things like action, add to-do, action, add new to-do. Toggle to-do, that's like checking the box, and that takes in an integer item ID. And then for deleting the thing, you also have an item ID. And then if I go to the views, so there's a URL, and then the URL goes to a view. So if I look at these views, they just take in what they need to. So action add new to do takes, it's a post request, and then you do some things with that. It renders a partial, okay, or it renders a piece of HTML. So I'm gonna go to that file. So this here represents a single to-do list item, and this is a templating language. So Django's got its own templating language. There's a lot of them out there, like I don't actually, Pug exists in JavaScript land. There's some others. This is just called the Django templating library. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm saying there's a div. It's got an ID that comes from a database entry. And then as I go down, you can see that there's a button for, let's see, okay, cool. So here's the delete button. And you can see, like, even here, I'm like rendering a template that figures out, like, here's the target, here's the outer HTML, here's the URL that I want to come up with, and the item ID. So you can just like set it up on the fly in the back end. Yeah.
So I just want to ask one question. So in terms of persistent data, in terms of this approach, how do you go about it?
Okay, persisting data.
Yeah, persisting the data.
Okay,
yeah.
cool. So if you look at the views here again, so our index page is just like get all the to-dos from the database and get the to-do form and then render the whole lot. So we can fetch stuff from the database very easily. Here's another one for like action, add new to-do. So this is the URL, this is the view that gets called when you click on the add button and submit that form. So it's like, cool, if the form is valid, then save the data from the form. So the form is just set up that it's associated with that specific model in the ORM. So again, like, so with Django's got a bit of a learning curve because it's got like the models and then you build forms based on models and da-da-da. So it's a little bit weird to get your head around at first. It's like a bunch of moving parts. But basically, we've got this to-do list item model. This represents a table. An instance of this represents an instant, like a row of the table. Then I've got, I don't know where I put the form. Form, add to-do form. Where is it? Okay, cool. So it's over here. So the add to do form is just like make a form to do with this class, and we just want to show the title field. So that's how that form is represented in the code. And then it has its own render function, which is kind of fun. But yeah, so then when we save this, when we post to this endpoint, it's just like, okay, the to-do form is valid, so save the instance. So what this does, what form.save does, is it makes, it's like creating a new instance of to-do item and then hitting the save button on that. You can also see this one, it's like toggle to-do. So here we're just changing the state of it. We're saying should, let me show you this again, the models. So here you can see it's got a Boolean field called completed, and its default is false. So if I go back to the views and I check what's happening here, it's like, okay, the item, we get it from the database. The item ID is in the URL. Then we say, we just toggle completed. So if it was false, it's true. If it's true, it was false, then we save it. And then we render a thing. So if the item is now complete, then we set a thing saying marked item blah, blah, blah as completed, or marked item blah, blah, blah as incomplete. Does that answer? Awesome.
Awesome, thank you. We've got 2 questions online. So the first one says, can HTMX be used on its own for building large-scale apps, or would you need to use it alongside a front-end framework?
So I didn't use a front-end framework at all here. Alpine.js calls itself a front-end framework, but it's like such a little tiny thing. So I'm not really sure if that is an accurate description of what it is. I think it's more of a library. I have not tried to use HTMX in conjunction with a front-end framework before. Yeah, so a discussion that I had the other day was like, how do you actually move from React to HTMX in a graceful way? Like, can you get them to work together? And to me, it seems almost like moving from React to HTMX is really hard. Like, you have to kind of take a Big Bang approach, but moving in the other way, in the other direction is much easier because HTMX is so simple. Like, I think it'll work fine. Yeah, it'll work fine in lots of different situations. It just seems like there's more friction in the one direction than the other. Yeah, I'm sure it does work in conjunction with other frameworks. But
Someone else can give us a talk on how they achieve that.
Yeah.
And then last question from Zalama as well says, does your code live in a single document, or can you create multiple HTMX pages but still make it behave like an SPA?
Yeah, so this is multiple pages already. So we've got our index here, things to do, and that's our main HTMX, that's our main like HTML page. And then here we're rendering some partials in a loop, and so we've got some stuff going on. Then we've got another partial for the alerts for the modals. Then we've got another partial for like the actual to-do item. So we've got a bunch of different pieces, and every page that you visit can have different pieces. So like the application I'm working on at the moment at work, it's like, you know, we've got a like page with like a header with a bunch of buttons on it, and each of like wherever you go, it's rendering a whole page. It's server-side rendering, but it's not like every single page can work differently because it has different stuff inside it. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we'll leave it at that for today. Thank you so much, Sheena. Thank you so much, everyone. I think we only got 4 questions.
Yeah, we did. Does anybody have any view questions?
Are there any view questions? Apparently, your point of view is a bit... Last question. We'll take a question here.
It is HTMX purely front end.
Yeah. So it's HTML.
On the browser.
Yeah. So it's a tiny little JavaScript library that just adds, like, it makes those extra attributes mean something. Yeah. So you can do some backend stuff with HTMX, like you can play with headers to change how different things get rendered. So you can say, I want this thing to replace the whole page, or I want it to replace a part of the page, depending on like different circumstances. So like, say a person visits your page for the first time, then you want to render everything. But then if they click on a thing, then you don't necessarily want to render the like a certain area again. So you could say, if you get to that route from clicking on a button, then only render this part. And that's something that you can do on the back end. And that's all, yeah.
Right. So in terms of, so I've been trying things out with React, and I noticed like it needs a lot, because if you want to build an application, you have to use React Native, you need an emulator, or install Expo Go, and there's just a lot. So compared to Vue, how does that whole process work?
Please repeat the question. I need to make sure that I'm answering the correct one. So. Vue focuses on one place that it excels at, and that is just web. I think when everyone was discovering themselves around the web space, React was like, oh, we have Next now, we have Gatsby, we have all these other things. We're doing Jamstack. Vue was like, oh, we have Next now, we're done. So the whole focus with the Vue ecosystem is just the web. See how there's now Vite for your build server. See the whole unJS ecosystem. Everything that is a pain point in JavaScript's land, they try to solve either by contributing to existing libraries or creating their own. So their focus is just the web platform. So my advice, unsolicited, would be for whatever platform that you're targeting, make sure that you tap into an ecosystem that's more native to it. If you want to build a native mobile application, try to see if you can do native mobile application, but don't be afraid to mix and match ecosystems, because it's not like a iOS, Android type of thing where you have to be a fan of one thing and use it only. Like for instance, in the previous company that I worked for, they use React Native for the native mobile app wrapper, but the app that you're interacting with is just Vue.js. So yeah.
That's interesting.
I think we will close it at that. Our two speakers will judge who the winners are, and we will contact you. So
There were some. What
for
were
those
the questions again? I've forgotten who was. It's all a blur.
it's a good thing we have a recording.
Oh, yes. Okay,
but
cool.
the first two questions were here, and
Yeah,
then there was a
I'll
third
put
question
that.
at the back,
This one there.
and then there was one question online, and then
Yeah.
there was one question here.
I'll have to check the recording.
Yes, and then
What are your
so
names?
6 questions in total. But our speakers are still around for at least the next 15 minutes, hopefully for a bit longer. You're more than welcome to engage them and ask them your questions. For people online, I think this is us. And Zalama, if you do win, we will contact you on Meetup, because you will be a member of meetup.com. Okay. And I know who you are already, so it's fine. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next month. We'll announce on meetup.com when that is. Thank you.
What were your questions again? What were your questions again? I don't. Was it?